and my iPad unlocked for a stranger's smile. It happened in the kitchen the way little revolutions do, quietly, with dirty mugs nearby. I had left my iPad face down by the fruit bowl, half-charged and bored. A man's laugh floated in from the hall, familiar in timbre, unfamiliar in ownership. Roman. He'd helped Dasha haul cases of wine up the stairs for the pop-up in our courtyard and had stayed to flirt with everyone and the air. He wandered in hunting for a corkscrew, found the iPad instead, and lifted it like you lift a menu at a new restaurant, curious and already forgiving. The screen woke. A padlock blinked. He grinned, crooked, practiced, and my iPad unlocked as if it had been waiting for his face all its life. I didn't lunge. I watched. There is a second between shock and scene that decides who you are. In that second, I saw everything ahead of me. The math of it, the hallway to a hotel lobby, the way anger conducts itself when it thinks it's handsome. I breathed. I put a hand on the counter. Roman set the tablet down with an apology that pretended to be a joke. "Face ID and we have chemistry," he said, half a bow. "Congratulations on owning very friendly technology." I tapped settings like a surgeon tapping a pulse. Face ID and passcode. 2 enrollments. First was mine, labeled bluntly. Second said alternate appearance, which is Apple's polite way of saying it will love one more face if you teach it who matters. I looked at the second unlabeled oval and saw the smallest diagram possible for betrayal. 2 anonymous heads, equally welcome. Myra was leaning in the doorway with a towel over her shoulder, the towel a peace flag if peace were useful. Her eyes flicked from Roman to me to the iPad, and then stayed on me the way you look at a cliff you are probably going to jump from anyway. "You added him," I said without a question mark, because question marks invite theater. "I added someone," she answered, honest enough to be cruel, "because I wanted to stop asking you to unlock what you weren't touching." Roman lifted his hands in that saintly way men do when they'd like to be credited for their exits. "I'll go downstairs," he said to the towel, to the fruit, to us. "Dasha needs opinions only a quitter can provide." He left quietly. Men like him know how to close doors that aren't theirs. Myra walked to the sink. She set the towel down, turned the tap, and then didn't use it. "I didn't plan to hand the iPad my mistakes," she said. "I planned to save time. And then saving time felt like getting permission, and permission felt like heat. I don't do speeches when there are knobs within reach." I picked up the iPad, hovered over Reset Face ID, and didn't press. I turned it toward her so the camera could stare directly into what we were doing. The dot grid skittered across her features. The padlock stayed shut. Mine still opened it instantly. A dog that only knows one command and obeys it absolutely, which made me want to kick it and kiss it in equal measure. "Why him?" I asked. "Because he listens," she said. "Because being looked at by him felt like being awake. Because you keep bringing competence to a place that sometimes needs hunger." She said it flatly, like releasing air from a tire that should have been changed months ago. I wanted to argue my virtues, steadiness, arrivals, the way I can keep trucks and deadlines from breaking the world. But virtues are lot numbers when the fire starts. I set the iPad down. 30 days, I said, because when courage comes, it arrives with an old calendar. No alternate faces in our house. No borrowed key intimacy. 30 days where we practice wanting loudly here. After that, if you still need a second face to make your life open, we name it out loud. I refuse to compete with equipment. Myra nodded in a way that made me believe we were not nomming a punishment but a practice. "What do you put on the table?" she asked. "Besides rules and the moral high ground you polish like silver." "Now," I said, and it tasted new even though my mouth knows the word. I start saying now before the dishes are stacked like alibis. I stop filing my desire under after work. I stop arriving only as logistics and learn how to arrive as weather. She leaned her hip against the counter, towel sliding, not shy, not theatrical. "Do you want me now?" she asked. "Not always. Now." "Yes," I said, and the kitchen remembered what room it is. We kissed like people who were tired of being excellent at everything except this. It wasn't acrobatic. It was precise. Her hand went to my shoulder the way it used to when rent was brave and pasta was a plan. I felt my own mouth stop editing. We came up for air and laughed at nothing because nothing is the place intimacy lives when it is healthy. Somewhere downstairs, corks popped and a chorus of practiced delight rose, and for once we were not performing for it. The next morning I deleted the alternate face. The button didn't care how symbolic it felt. Myra watched me do it the way you watch a hairdresser cut off the style that suited you when you were pretending to be someone else, tinier than trauma, larger than convenience. We set a passcode only we know. We wrote it down nowhere. "Teach it us," she said. "Not anyone who makes us feel like a plot." Day 4 we failed. I stayed late because a loading bay had decided physics was negotiable. She stayed out because Dasha's opening had become a dance anyone could join for the price of a glance. We came home brittle and polite. We slept like neighbors. In the morning she said louder, our rule when the tidy version isn't kind enough. I said, "I am afraid I'm boring outside of the moments I'm useful." She said, "I am afraid I'm only interesting when I'm in danger." We touched foreheads the way you do when you believe in triage. Day 6 I saw Roman at the cafe buying coffee he didn't deserve to look that good holding. He lifted his cup. I lifted nothing. "I withdrew my face," he said, as if one could do such a thing at a counter. Whatever this was, it didn't need souvenirs. I appreciated the sentence. I disliked how elegantly he wore it. "Learn to like doors that lock from the inside," I said. He nodded, he left. It mattered less than I'd expected. On day 8 my iPad offered me a memory. It had titled Home Nights. The cover was Myra's wrist dusted with flour, our sink full of guilty plates, my hand at the back of her neck like a lighthouse that's finally useful. I watched it twice without music. When she came home, I airplayed it without warning. She laughed and put her face into my shoulder at the photo where we looked stolen from a better couple. "Keep that," she said. "Hide the ones where we thought being curated was the same as being alive." We made lists on the fridge like teenagers' heat to-dos. Some were embarrassing, kiss in the elevator after we press 9. Some were domestic spells, wash fruit and then eat it with our hands while standing. Some were mutual dares, meet at 3 in the hallway and pretend it's a house we don't pay for. We missed a few items and added better ones. We forgave ourselves for missing them before we did. I kept the iPad out in the kitchen like a reformed thief keeps his door unlocked. Not naive, just deliberate. When we cooked, it became a dumb plate for recipes, not a screen where anyone else's face could sell us our own reflection. When we argued, we put it face down as a discipline. When we kissed, it accidentally took photos with our noses and we saved them, absurd and holy. On day 11, Dasha cornered me between paintings and olives. "Do you hate me for introducing new weather into your forecast?" she asked, eyes bright with gossip that knows when to bow. "I don't hate meteorologists," I said. "I hate people who bring umbrellas to a drought and call it kindness." She kissed my cheek like a blessing and told me the wine was too proud of itself. I agreed. We were suddenly good at agreeing on the correct things. On day 14, we took a walk under the bridge where the city's breath sounds like a choir rehearsing forgiveness. Myra told me about the first time she realized she had become a room other people decorated, interns and clients, and a mother who thinks good girls never sweat. She told me about the first time Roman said something that found the vertebrae she hides behind yes. I told her about the first time I mistook being steady for being silent. We stood under a seam of light and said nothing, which was, for once, enough. By day 17, the iPad had learned a new trick. It unlocked for me when I looked like a disaster, hair wrong, glasses lost, shirt a rumor. It refused Myra when she came in from a run with a cap pulled low and a new mouth from breathing. We took it as a joke and a parable. Machines are stupid and loyal. They can be taught. So can we. On day 19, Roman texted her. She showed me immediately, the screen bright as a doorknob. I removed my face, he wrote. Not just in your settings. She typed back. Good, we are finally busy. He said nothing after, which was, for him, eloquence. On day 20, my phone made a montage called together. Alex and Myra, and because the machine has a sense of humor, suggested a soundtrack that slapped. We let it play once and then muted it and watched the cuts the way you watch a child finally get the shape of a circle right. Messy, perfect, something you didn't think would ever be this simple. Day 30 arrived without applause. We overcooked rice and undersalted the universe. We opened a window to let in a rueful breeze. She stood on the chair to reach the top shelf, and I stood behind her to hold the chair in case gravity remembered it had a job. Do you still want me now? She asked from up there, hair ridiculous, shirt unthreatening. Always, I said, a word I use sparingly because it deserves hunger to back it up. She climbed down and kissed me like we were both good at spending. We didn't celebrate by re-enrolling faces. We celebrated by not needing to. When she needed the iPad, she asked for it and I handed it to her like a passport to a country that trusts its citizens. When I needed her, I didn't schedule the request around what would make me look like a better man. I said now, at ugly times, when the sink was full, when she was half-zipped, when I was consoled only by coffee. We took turns deciding which now lived and which waited, and the waiting was kind because it wasn't disguised as virtue. A week later, we did the stupidly brave thing that separates people who live somewhere from people who rent scenery. We invited ourselves to our own afternoon. No errands, no guests, no curated angles. Sun at 3:10 like a drunk blessing. We made toast and put too much butter where modesty would have gone. We argued about nothing and then kissed the argument into something our bodies understood better than our mouths. I pressed the iPad's shutter with my knuckle and caught a blur that looks like proof. Sometimes I still see Roman. Cities repeat faces until you learn your lines. Once outside the conservatory, he nodded like a man watching his former favorite song become a hymn for somebody else. You look like citizens, he said, of your own country. We do. It's messy here. The plumbing complains. The light is sometimes wrong. But the passport photo is our worst angle and we still show it at the border and they let us through. I kept the towel from that first night, the neutral domestic flag. It hangs on the oven handle, stained by tomatoes and rigorous attempts to be ordinary. When I dry my hands on it, I remember the moment the iPad offered to love a second face and I said no, not out of spite, but out of design. Not because we needed to be pure, but because we finally wanted to be particular. If you need the moral in prose a machine can understand, here. Teach your devices to recognize only the faces that are responsible for the rent. If you need the moral for a body, here. Say now when you mean it. Later, only when you can promise it is not a synonym for never, and always like a word that requires maintenance. Last night the iPad unlocked to my tired face while I held a peach under the faucet and she laughed at my seriousness and then bit the fruit I was washing and juice ran down her wrist and I followed it with my mouth. It wasn't cinematic. It was ours. The screen dimmed. The kitchen leaned in. The towel waited to be useful. The door stayed closed because we were finally inside.